Time for a journey back to the coziness of Heavensward. It is time to check out Alexander, the first raid series of an FF14 expansion, one that was, well, in a fairly dramatic part of the game's history actually, when the game was quite different. Through all the change, Alexander still remains perfectly preserved, a brilliant slice of narrative for any new player to enjoy. And with the intro done, I think it's time to just leap into the Alexander raid experience. 3 years ago, an earthquake rocked the region, and now a Hulk has appeared. Aether is draining so fast that the whole region is going to be sucked dry. Oh, and the bloody Illuminati are behind it, so I sure am glad I read those Dan Brown novels. Still, Aether, potential primal? Well, that's typical Scion work. Plus, goblins. Yeah, Alexander has goblins. Illuminati goblins. What a wacky world. And this time we've even got a goblin child, Roundrocks. She cares about one thing, having the most epic pile of rubbish and refuse. It's the simple things that count. But wait, who's this edgy, eye-scar, blue-haired treasure hunter? It's Meat. And with her introduced, it's time to enter Alexander to work out what the hell is going on. Now this is old content, straight up. The format is even different to Omega and beyond, right? Even having trash. But I've got to say, the feeling of exploring this giant construct is really satisfying. Not really peak raid feeling content, but honestly, it's a nice adventure into a big robot. I'm happy. All the while the plot thickens. It turns out there's a treasure she's hunting called the Enigma Codex, and well, we get a lot of setup. The Enigma Codex is a 100-year-old blueprint for a perfect machine that will bring about a perfect world, and Maid is hunting for it. Not that she needs to go that far. Roundrock's favorite shiny rock is in fact the last missing piece of the Codex, and she can even interact with it. There's actually more to this Codex than you would think. The Codex will only respond to people who agree with it, who vibe with it, who gel with it, and that alone implies quite a lot. The big question though, what the hell is Maid up to? Why does she want this? And who is the he that she remembers being so happy with? For a second, you'd almost think that she's some sort of old fling of Sid's. I wonder how many people thought that at the time, at least for a second or two. It's a strange situation. Alexander, a machine blueprinted within the Codex, but is summoned in as a primal. And that certainly has implications. Well, it's time for me to go back in, and this time I'm fighting liquid metal, and I'm doing it unsynced. Yeah, I know, not ideal, but frankly, I was super into the groove of this mystery, and with the queues being upward of 30 minutes, I was just excited to go and do a solo adventure. You know what? The story all worked out. The spectacle's there, liquid metal is also really cool, so even in solo, just the sheer awe of the whole thing, that's something else. Alexander is feeling like a classic adventure. So, liquid metal's dead, and it's Illuminati time. They're a strange bunch, especially their leader. Quick thinks all thoughts. Yep, and he seems to know too much. Convinced he's trundling along to a perfect future just the way it's meant to be, one where he will lord over Alexander, building a perfect world within the Citadel, fate of the wider world be damned. Because of course the ether consumption would ruin it. Finally dismantling the core of Alexander's arm, only after a spectacle of a fight, should have left the Illuminati shaken. But it doesn't. They seem to be okay. Hell, earlier they even managed to raid our base. It's kinda like there, in spite of being a pack of goofy goblins, leader even sporting a funny evil guy cat, it would seem, like they're 2 steps ahead of us. The intrigue goes deeper. With Roundrock's shiny rock being the last thing the Illuminati needs, Maid takes it for safekeeping. And this is where we learn that Maid's party tried to summon Alexander 3 years ago, caught up in the rush of trying to manifest the Codex's bright future. It was basically the goal of their tribe to do that, and in trying that, well, they failed. They actually died, everyone bar Maid. But how? What happened? She doesn't have answers yet. She cares about Roundrocks though, it seems, and takes this piece for safekeeping. But to be honest, I mean, come on. She's an eye-scar, edgy badass. I don't know if I trust her. All the while, these are just nice scenes. It's just cozy. And you know what? It's a reminder that even with the somewhat more simple cinematic techniques, Heavensward era quests have still totally got it. But a crash rings out, the zone shakes. Alexander's second arm has awoken. Oh shit, did Maid betray us? Either way, it's time for me and the boys to bust in the front door and sort things out. Or it would be, if I'd bothered to do my Aether current quests, because Alexander's second arm conveniently fell on an island. Cheers, lads. Okay, quest done, flight unlocked, I go in. This time, synced. Boss 1 shredded us. That's what happens when you just sort of think, easy content, old content, brain go bye-bye. Then you die. A moment or two of actually engaging the old brain and bothering, and it goes down. Onward then. Biggs and Widge spot Maid meeting with the Illuminati, handing over the Codex piece and merrily joining them. Grand betrayal? Not really. One boss gauntlet later, it is time for answers. Her story is altogether more tragic. Away goes the cool veneer that is really just something over somebody who is just following her heart. Seeking meaning and a place in the world, she joined up. Only really because her heart had fallen for Diane, the group's leader. 3 years ago, they in fact tried to activate Alexander, but it attacked them. Only she survived, the Codex shattered, and poor Diane fell into its core. Consumed. Conventional logic says as much, right? That's what happens more with a primal. But no, she believes his soul is still somehow there. And that's the thing, Alexander is not a machine, Alexander is a primal, so its state will depend on that of the summoner. Maid and her friends had no bad intent. They wanted a bright future, so much like how some things went with Phoenix and Louisoix, well, Alexander's not evil. Could Alexander actually be the same, be imbued with what they wanted? And of course, obviously with the downside of consuming Aether, like a primal does. Perhaps Diane's source then isn't a source of fuel. Maybe he's not tempered. And ultimately this is why she worked with everyone, why she actually helped the Illuminati summon in Alexander. Sure, she might regret it now because it's looking quite bad, but the heart wants what it wants. It's just a pity that put the whole star at risk. And worse, a shocked Wedge reports Round Rock's capture. Oh shit, the Illuminati have the missing piece, which is in fact Round Rock's, because she can interact with the Codex, so it's time for the Warrior of Light to do what they do best. Distract the enemy, while the others go and do the rescuing, or at least try to. By now, I'm realizing just the sheer cool factor of Alexander. We don't run into a fight, no, we slide through a pipe and jump into battle. We ride conveyor belts. They didn't need to go to that effort, but they did. And even with me doing half of these unsynced, the adventure fantasy is totally there. And then Onslaughter happens. Holy shit, what a cool boss. I mean, even just that phase transition. It is so cool. You might think victory assured then. No. We've won, but Quick Thinks is just not that worried. Why? He should be. And what's the deal with his cat? And then it happens. A minor explosion rattles the platform, and Maid drops the core piece right into Quick Thinks' hands. He's just chilling there waiting, as if he knows what's going to happen. Which is a little bit chilling when you think about the stakes. And we arrive back to base, to the shock of everyone there. We've just had a full adventure. They just watched us leave a few minutes ago. So it's time for another Alexander mind explosion then. Some temporal bullshit is afoot, and it seems to have started from the moment we walked through the shield to Alexander. Y'shtola and Sid confirm the madness. Aether is actually flowing back in time, and that means all the damage we did may be for naught because they can just rewind it. So what the hell does that mean? Well, I guess it means that time flowed extremely slowly while we were within the shield. Right, Quick Thinks may be a time traveler. And I mean what? We're fated? These things are just going to happen? Somehow, we're going to do what we do. We can't try to not do what we're going to do, because knowing we're going to try that, we'll always do what we do, therefore Atheris is doomed. That doesn't sound great, does it? But hey, may as well try to fight, so we go in to shut down that final core. Quick Thinks' curl has betrayed him, though. Yeah, she led Sid and Y'shtola to an Illuminati spy, and Sid, being a man who really has seen a lot at this stage, just knows that talking to a cat is a totally reasonable thing to do. So do it he does. 2 mews for yes, 1 mew for no. Then, Bagrix remembers Round Rox's account of finding the glowstone, that there was indeed a black curl kitten there. Now, if that was 3 years ago, but it's still a kitten, is this time travel? Because clearly this is not a normal coral. And I love Y'shtola's line here about the desire to fix past mistakes. That essentially is the past blinding us to our future, because it forces us to not live in the present. And seriously, the way FF14 is written, it truly does just have those nice lines. It truly does get you to think about things, and I really appreciate that. Oh, and, I mean, the next fight I do, it just has the scale going up Alexander. I mean, goddamn. Again, this raid is such an adventure. So, entryway secured, I return outside for another Might flashback. TLDR, Ascians gave her a horn with vast aether draining power to help summon in the Alexander Primal. It's a horn that has eluded the Scions, and of course, bloody Ascians. And yes, Alexander is actually drawing aether from the star itself. That is bad. Perhaps Endwalker would have went a little bit differently had that succeeded. Y'shtola and Matoya's plan to stop this drain is a complete wash, so back in to shut down the core I go, but not before spotting Quickthinks. And the same cat. How can there be 2? I mean, what is this? A sort of quantum... Schrodinger. Yes, that one. He ended up visiting Eorzea somehow. At this stage, anything could happen in the Dimensional Rift. I'll buy it. How do they get this to be so on the nose, but still have it work and actually be cool? This team is insane, and I love it. Now, it's all about saving Round Rox, whose free young mind will let her use this codex, and, well, therefore the Illuminati have her chained up. And, holy shit, we find Round Rox. And the next thing that happens, we're going 3 years back in time. So, whoa. Maid's friends died because we brought the Illuminati back with us, and the Illuminati shot them. It's a bloody time loop. The sort you know about once you've seen it, right? You know you're in this time loop because you've just realized it, but that likely means that from your first-person perspective, you're entirely powerless to not be in the time loop because you got yourself in the time loop. Again, whoa. Shanoa, our name for the cute curl, knocks Bagrix's diary out of his hands. And funny enough, it does happen to look just like Quickthinks' future book. This is when the penny drops. Quickthinks found this bloody diary. He isn't a time traveler with access to the future. He's just a guy who found a diary. The act of finding it ensured he would get it. Again, whoa. A Maid, broken by the fatalistic manner of her suffering, and falling into despair because of it, obviously not having access to her own future, stays behind in the control room. And back into Alexander we go to shut it down, and in a turn of justice, Quickthinks' pad shakes, the diary and Shanoa fall, and it's confirmed. Yes, that is in fact just the diary. Alexander Prime time. Immediately we should be dead. That beam should have killed us, and I just love this cutscene. Time freezes, the beam charges, we're unaware, and then bam, conveniently it stops. And those reaction shots are just great. We live. Alexander Prime retreats to a pocket dimension. It's just too convenient, right? I haven't mentioned this yet, but way earlier in the story it was speculated that Alexander might actually be a vast thinking machine, one capable of running simulations. I know this has me thinking. If Maid is right, and her love's soul is within it, does that mean there could be something else going on? Well, while fighting Prime, we actually save ourselves from that very moment. We save ourselves from time stopping the beam hitting us. Now this is wild. We only save ourselves if we are able to defeat Alexander Prime, right? So that means that breaking the time loop is predicated on us being strong enough to defeat it. I guess then, if so, why set this up? What's going on? Are there more things to think about here? At the very least, it's kind of cool. The way you know you've already defeated Alexander Prime, because it didn't kill you with the beam. Up to the control room, where Quick Thinks tries to rewind time, revealing that he could in fact control the Codex after all. I suppose he was just arrogant enough about the potential perfection that he would be able to use the Codex, but a returning Mind knows that using Alexander would consume him, that he was cowardly using Roundrox, a child instead, so a well-earned shot to the back of the head he gets. Mind is cool. She really is, and it turns out that when all the stuff went down, she got knocked about the place and somehow ended up feeling safe. Certainly giving us a hint that Alexander isn't just Alexander. Quick Thinks, though, is mostly a robot, so surviving barely, he tries to control Alexander, only for the machine itself to deny him. Now uncontrolled by the Codex, Alexander is consuming vast amounts of aether. His screens flash blue. It's Diane. Maid was right. She can be with him in the core. So she follows her heart, realizing that she will be with him for a moment for all of time. This is where the lore gets insane, and I think directly calls to Endwalker. Alexander is a thinking machine, one able to simulate any future. I would imagine, therefore, as well, any past. This itself is a major revelation. The type of computational power needed is just beyond us and actually involves solving some very, very, very hard problems that essentially, well, cause issues for quantum computers. Now, this kind of implies that the Codex is essentially an unimaginably beautiful creation. This is also a bit dark. This kind of suggests that perhaps Alexander could even run an ancestor simulation, and that's something that's morally questionable, to say the very least. Yet Alexander understands its goal, a perfect future. And while it could swipe away Dalamud, prevent calamities, move Atheris to perfect harmony, it knows that the aether cost in doing so would be too much. And I suppose that's it. Diane is within Alexander, so perhaps any of the negatives caused by how the Illuminati summoned in Alexander will have been smoothed over, right? Now it's time to talk about Endwalker spoilers. How does Alexander's simulation work? If you can simulate one thing perfectly and work your way outward from that to deduce things with perfect accuracy and therefore simulate fully backward and forward, then you can basically, well, you have reality in a box. So, does Alexander know of the Ancients? Of Endsinger? Does it see a future where it does good, but consumes so much aether that it causes a calamity, freeing Zodiark, perhaps causing the rejoining? At which point, the end days would almost certainly occur. After all, Emmett Selk's mind was wiped in Elpis. So he knew nothing of Meteon until we used the Azim Crystal at the very end of Endwalker. And that's when he finally learns, what was really going on, and understands that the whole Ascian plan was essentially doomed. There's a lot to ponder here. Perhaps Alexander also saw the future from Shadowbringers, where, Graha and the Warrior of Light dying, all of that. So again, just whoa. Alexander fits so much of what was to come. Ultimately, Alexander realized that regardless of what it did, its own etheric consumption would be too much. It would bring about the end. And that a perfect world would always end. Which, again, makes you think about some of the future themes of this story. And because of this, it concluded that all it can do is delete itself from existence, safe in the knowledge that one person could save the world. You. Did Alexander see our whole future? No, not in its entirety. Only that beyond the day where the world's fate would be in our hands, its ability to see the future ended. All Alexander did was use that curl to cause the events that will lead to its own destruction. But it hasn't fully clicked yet. Diane and Maid lock themselves in a time loop with the horn so that it could be locked away safe. Alexander is stuck in time, and we are back. Roundrox can no longer see the stone anymore, no longer the innocent child. But Shanoa appears. we give it the stone. And this is where the whole story clicks. On a tome from Y'shtola, we see the beginning of Maid's tribe. The beginning is a man and a woman stepping out of a steel giant. It is Maid and Diane. They are in fact their own ancestors, and they live out a happy life together 100 years ago. What an actual perfect ending. Well, there we have it. Suffice to say, I fucking loved this. It was great. Really? Wow. Okay. Yes. Very happy. Also very different to Omega. And that's something I really noticed. Omega was insane. Alexander is insane. Even, Coils and all of that, kind of insane too. These raid themes are all so different. Like, okay, no harm to Warcraft because this is just like the standard way of, doing this kind of content in video games, and definitely FF14 is the abnormal thing, but I'm so used to it just being, go into the bad guy's big house, kill all his mates, and kill him. And most of the time, that is really fun. Like, you got a really, a fun, well-motivated villain, and that works, and it makes me happy. But here, there's always a twist. It's always a little bit different. It's always not exactly what you think it's going to be. And each one of these experiences is so deeply woven into the overall narrative, not only of the expansion or the patch, but really of the whole game experience. And I really love that. And absolutely, Eden, come on, it'll be happening soon. Then the scale. The scale is just epic with Alexander, right? It absolutely is with Omega too, but I guess they just really sell that you are in this absolutely humongous thing. I really like Warhammer, and feeling like I'm just within a massive titan was just really cool. And just even, the sliding about the place, the going down the chutes, it all just felt like an adventure. And as I think about it more, these just being these really cool, like they're raids, but they feel unique in what they're doing narratively. Just these self-contained stories. And it just makes me think, does separating these from the MSQ allow for way more creative freedom, right? That's really something that I think about. Because, when everything's tied to the A-plot, it's got to do its thing for the A-plot. And it seems like FF does really well by not tying its big raids into the A-plot, right? Because whenever they need a big fight in the story, they make it a trial. If they need you to go through the bad guy's house or something, they make it a dungeon. And all just flows quite nicely. But with these, it just seems like they really construct the whole raid around some sort of really cool narrative conceit. They're just like these mini narrative campaigns that just happen in the expansions, right? I just love what they've got going on. And then it really makes me think of a video, actually, that Matt did in the channel that I think you should really check out. It's about how Yoshi P, the man loves mystery novels. He really, really loves mystery novels. Like, he has read a near unhealthy amount of mystery novels. And between Omega and this, I really see them using the mystery novel format well. And of course, now that's got me thinking about Pandemonium. Because I really enjoyed Pandemonium. Certainly more of the plot got interesting to me, like, toward the end. But now it's like, holy shit, where is Pandemonium going to go? Now that I've, like, done Omega and done Alexander and seen just how bonkers they can go, just how far they can push their narrative. And I think for all of that, it just created in me this great sense of going on an adventure with Sid and the lads, which, you know what, I'm totally down for, and I want to do again. So I'm told that I've got to do the twinning. It was an optional dungeon in Shadowbringers that apparently between doing this and Omega, I'm going to have like a big moment with. So I think I'm going to go and do that. But this is the video on Alexander. I just love it, and it's got me thinking about how we structure content in an MMO. How FF14, it's not tied to these monolithic releases between the Alliance raid and the raid and the regular raid series, having their sort of TikTok format between the patches. They can sort of develop these storylines, across the patches, and they're not tied into the MSQ, which means the MSQ is very much free to do its thing rather than having to be there to support a big raid and everything that a raid would entail. It just makes me think they really have the format of this game down. I mean, probably in a way that allowed them to actually do things a little bit cheaper, a little bit more bite-sized when they were a smaller team and had the Herculean task of getting this game back into a good state. But from whatever sort of born that way of formatting the endgame of the patch cycle, I think it's just allowed for really just cool storytelling opportunities. So a big thumbs up to the format, a big thumbs up to this experience. I'd say it's very fun to do, synced via the Duty Finder, which I did for a few of them. Certainly you have to for the end because of the tank limit break is required, and A5 also, I think, don't bother trying to solo that one. The tank buster will probably just kill you. I mean, if you're a tank, you can probably do it, of course. But even doing the rest of them unsynced, go slow. Don't always burst all your cooldowns. I would definitely say that in hindsight. But I guess it feels like you are just doing a Final Fantasy adventure on easy mode. You're not going to die, but you're going to see a little bit of the fights. You're going to be there doing things. You're going to feel like a participant in the narrative. So that's also a valid option, I think, especially for those of us who don't enjoy the queue. Because for me, it was like, okay, queue, tab over and do my dailies. And that just broke the narrative flow. And to be honest with you, I just felt really in my groove the night that I did this, and I just wanted to sit down and just experience it all in one as one big story. I know that's not how these tend to be experienced when the game is actually, coming out, right? Like with Pandemonium, but that's how I did it. I thought it was really fun. And I suppose there's the other thing of, the fights aren't as good as what you will have in the past. You can really see how the team iterated and learned as they went from the first wing to the second and the second to the third. And then of course through to Omega. And I think the incredible increase in battle content quality that I think happened in Stormblood. But anyway, I'm rambling on. Do Alexander. So many of my fellow Sprouts won't have done it. You should do it. It's great. And I love how this content is all just there and feeling good. It's like there's some stuff in some other games where it's like, oh, hey, I remember doing Wrathgate. It was really cool. And you go into the attack in the Undercity. What a great storyline. And it's like, oh, the attack in the Undercity's been removed from the game. So, a new player can't experience that story. I can't share that thing that I loved with the new player because it's literally non-existent. Whereas, here, well, that's what's happened with me, right? It's been great. Okay. Have a wonderful day. See you next time.